After the gold standard collapse, the new international monetary system was called the dollar standard. It started in 1944 under the Bretton Woods Agreement. Countries around the world, they met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and agreed that the dollar was going to be the benchmark or standard against which all other currencies will set a rate of exchange, a fixed rate. My home country, for example, Nicaragua, had a rate of 7 pesos per dollar. Now let's look at what this means. Remember, under the gold standard, $1 exchanged for 1/20 ounces. If you multiply that rate by 20, you get 20 equals 1 ounces. So the rate is the same as $20 per ounce. Under the Bretton Woods Agreement, for example, a country like Nicaragua will have the exchange as 7 pesos, $1. I'm just using that as an illustration. And the dollar instead, or in turn, will exchange for $35 per ounce of gold. Now, if we treat the gold as foreign exchange, you know, the currency that everybody wants to have a hold of. So gold will be on the horizontal axis, and the price of gold will be on the vertical axis. So this will be dollar per ounces, and of course the total gold here will be measured in ounces, which were at the time several million ounces. So if you put the supply here and a demand, this is, or was supposedly, $35 per ounce. Okay. However, in the late 1960s, the US experienced inflation and an overvalued dollar. In 1971, the US merchandise imports exceeded merchandise exports. So as a result, gold outflow occurred. I already explained this in the previous video. Whenever we have an increase in imports, then we have an outflow of money. In this case was an outflow of gold. And that contributes to an increase in the demand for gold, which appreciates gold, but depreciates the dollar. What is a dollar depreciation in relation to the gold? So instead of $35 per ounce of gold, a depreciation of the dollar will mean something like 40, let's say, dollars per ounce of gold. That is a dollar depreciation. So, or conversely, a gold appreciation. So what happens is, in the market, in the exchange of gold and dollars, the equilibrium actually occurred at a higher price. And that price, hypothetically, I'm putting 40. And the 35, which is the official exchange rate, was just too low. And as you can see here, the quantity, this is a quantity supplied, this is a quantity demanded. So the quantity demanded of gold was greater than the quantity supply of gold at that price of 35. So that the implication of this was that the dollar was overvalued. In other words, the United States was given the dollar too much value by putting it 5 per ounce when it should have been 40 per ounce or maybe another number. So there was a meeting in Washington to devalue the dollar by 8%. But then in 1972, the trade deficit tripled, which means more appreciation of the dollar and more depreciation of the, more appreciation of the gold and more depreciation of the dollar. Then in 1973, as a result of all this, the dollar was devalued by 10%. And the Germans wanted to defend the dollar. And it doesn't say here the dollars exchanged for German marks. People wanted to get more German marks and less dollars, which further devalued the dollar. And the Germans at the time, they wanted to defend the dollar, and they bought more dollars to increase the demand for dollars. And that means, or that meant at the time, trying to appreciate the dollar, but that didn't work either. So as a result of these complications, the Bretton Woods system collapsed. And what we have these days is not all currencies being exchanged at the fixed rate against the dollar. We have what is called a managed float. It's a combination of freely floating exchange rate and intervention by central banks. So yes, supply and demand determines the currency exchange value with another currency, but if it is getting out of hand, then the central banks will make purchases or sell foreign exchange in order to keep the exchange rate within what they will call reasonable, or what they consider reasonable range.